Good evening and welcome to the video edition of Rants and Raves. This episode is entitled Racism and Identity Politics, or just, You're a Racist! Well, it's still happening, of course. Guess what? People who voted for Trump supporters, are being called racists. The foreign press is going on about how America has just elected a racist president. Racist, homophobic, sexist, that one's probably true, etc., etc. But, alright, last episode we discussed why Hillary lost the election. Basically, that you don't get real traction with the electorate by insulting them and calling them names that they really don't like and are deeply offended by. So, what is this racism thing? I mean, are we even agreed on what it really is? The fact is, lately, the word has been so overused that it's come to mean simply asshole. Sorry about that. I make this for friends of mine who like to spread it around their communities where people are sensitive to bad language. Sorry. But at any rate, well, the thing about that is, of course, they mean racism means asshole. No more, no less. You know, I don't like you, you're an asshole, therefore you're a racist. Well, this logically doesn't stack up, you know, because after all racists are assholes, but not all assholes are racists. But it does serve a function for the person making that accusation there, because of course he can go, well, I am not a racist, therefore I am not an asshole. Also, does not follow, take it from me, really, you're an asshole. At any rate, why would they do that? Why do people do this? I mean, why do they go around calling people racists? Furthermore, their whole notion, their whole view of the world, of America, is that America is a deeply racist country. Well, within my lifetime, I have seen real racism, and I've seen it decline almost to insignificance. With one exception, and I'll get to that. It might be more accurate to say that I've seen it change form. I remember seeing legal segregation in our local swimming pool when I was a child, when there was a rail running down the dressing room and the colored folks had to go on the other side of it. It was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, by the way, for some of you self-righteous Yankees. What do they hope to accomplish by that? Well, I think maybe a couple of things, but I would like to talk to you about what racism looks like on the left, because that's where I think it is. And hot button issue. Larry Elder said in his book, 10 Things You Can't Say in America, he said, I think number one on the list was, black folks are more racist than white folks. Folks, we know that's true. White folks have been bending over backwards to show they're not racists for quite some time and are getting called racists anyway. The charge of racism is almost exclusively on the left, and that's where I think the real racism is. Now, what else would you call it when somebody insists that this particular group of people can't make it without their help, without somebody else's help? That it's not enough to lift the obstructions, the legal disabilities that minorities, particularly black folks, have historically suffered under in this country and such like that, but you have to go beyond that to erase the effect of generations of that sort of thing. My strong impression is, among the crowd that is most likely to call you a racist, is that they are. Well, of course, you know, anybody can say, well, you're another. But in this case, I think it's quite justified. The people on the left who like to use that term don't really think of minorities as human beings. You know, they see them as symbols of their own virtue, like that. They're not, in some way, they're not really real to them and all. Now, why is the left so obsessed by race? In a book entitled Impossibility, The Limits of Science and the Science of Limits, which I recommend, My own copy happens to be in Warsaw in my apartment, but for mine, the author claims that there is allegedly a mathematical proof that says that any voting system can be dominated by a coalition of minorities. Think about the implications of that for a second. That would seem to mean that in any two-party system, there is going to be one party whose interest is to create divisions, i.e. more minorities, i.e. identity politics. They don't want assimilation. They don't want people to identify with a larger community, such as the United States of America, for example. They want people's strongest sense of identity to be a smaller group that they can gather in coalitions. This is why the party of bigger government basically wants to see this happen there, because as more and more decisions are taken out of the hands of private individuals and put into the hands of government, particularly economic decisions, which is everything from hiring to favoring with spots in education, government contracts, whatever. At any rate, whenever more decisions that were formerly left in the private sphere are gathered into the public sphere, then people have to organize. They have to organize aggressively to seize the mechanism of the state to favor their group, or defensively. When one person starts doing, it's like the first person to get a gun, because the state is a gun. All law is based on force. They have to, as I said, organize either aggressively or defensively, and the most natural form of organization in the absence of an ideology is the call of blood, is relatedness, something you can see. Who do you look like? Whatever. Of course, people are fond of saying, well, I don't see color. Well, for God's sake, of course you see color. It's the first thing I can see about you as you're walking 3 blocks away down the street towards me. Of course we see it. It would be pointless to deny that. What we associate with it is something else entirely. After that, it matters a whole lot whether your pants are halfway down your butt and you're wearing your baseball hat backwards, or whether you're dressed in a Brooks Brothers suit and carrying an attaché case. Believe me, that's far more important than color when somebody is making an assessment as to how dangerous you may or may not be. So, coalitions of minorities. But there's something else I think it means, and I have wondered about this for quite some time, and I'm talking about so-called white liberal guilt. And I say so-called because I don't think it is guilt. That's not the impression I get. The impression I get is overwhelmingly smug. It's a fingernails on the blackboard smug, I am so much better than you because, after all, I'm not a racist. Like that. But beyond that, below that, something. What do you think when somebody keeps constantly harping on mea culpa, mea maxima culpa? Oh, I am so terribly, terribly sorry about what my people have done to yours. What's the corollary of that? What can you almost not avoid thinking of when somebody says that? I'm so terribly sorry for what my people have done to you. Could it be that the underlying message is, never forget what my people can do to yours? Thank you very much. I will leave you with that thought. Good night.